The forest moon of 4 was one of the most dangerous places in the known galaxy. The trees grew so tall that their tops disappeared into the clouds. The air was thick and wet, filled with the sounds of creatures that hunted in the eternal twilight beneath the canopy. Most species avoided this moon completely. The Galactic Union had marked it as a restricted zone, warning all travelers to stay away. But had made it her home. She was a small woman, even by human standards. Her black hair was always tied back in a simple ponytail, and her skin had become tanned from years of working under alien suns. She wore practical clothes, a worn jacket, sturdy boots, and pants with many pockets for her research equipment. Nothing about her appearance suggested that she was special in any way. Yet she had done something that no other being in the galaxy had ever accomplished. She had earned the trust of the were monsters. At least, that was what every species in the Galactic Union believed. They stood 3 meters tall at the shoulder, their bodies covered in thick silver fur that could deflect low-powered energy weapons. They had 6 eyes that glowed like copper fire, arranged in a crown around their massive skulls. Their claws were legendary, sharp enough to tear through starship hull plating like paper. Their howls could shake the ground and freeze the blood of any creature that heard them. They were apex predators, the absolute rulers of their world. Every other creature on 4 existed only because they allowed it. When the Galactic Union had first discovered 4, they had sent a research team to study the moon. They had killed them all within 3 days. A second team was sent, this time with military protection. They killed them too. After the third failed attempt, the Union declared the moon forbidden and moved on to safer worlds. Then arrived. She had been young then, fresh from the university on Earth, filled with dreams of understanding alien life. The Union had refused her request to study on 4, so she had gone anyway, using her own savings to hire a pilot who was brave enough, or foolish enough, to drop her on the forest moon. Everyone expected her to die within a week. That was 4 years ago. Had not tried to study them from a distance. She had not hidden in a fortified bunker or observed them through cameras. Instead, she had walked into their territory openly, carrying no weapons, showing no fear. They had surrounded her, their 6-eyed gazes burning with hunger and curiosity. She should have died that day, but something made her stand still and meet the eyes of the pack's matriarch, a massive female with a scar across her snout that glinted silver in the dim light. Had bowed her head slowly, a gesture of respect she had read about in old Earth wolf studies. Then she had waited. The matriarch had come close, close enough that could feel the heat of her breath, could smell the blood of recent prey on her fur. The great beast had sniffed her, circled her, studied her with all 6 eyes. Then, for reasons still did not fully understand, the matriarch had turned and walked away, leaving alive. That was the beginning. Over the following months, learned the language of the. It was not spoken with words, but with growls, postures, and subtle movements of ears and tail. She learned their customs, their hierarchy, their stories. She shared meals with them, eating the same raw meat they ate, never showing disgust or hesitation. She helped tend to injured pack members, using her medical knowledge to treat wounds and infections. Slowly, impossibly, they began to accept her. They gave her a name in their language, Sister. It meant one who walks with the pack but is not of the pack. It was the first time in history that such a title had been granted to an outsider. The matriarch, whom had named for the scar on her snout, became something like a friend. The great beast would sit with during the quiet hours, their bodies closed together for warmth, sharing silence that needed no translation. When research outpost was damaged in a storm, they helped her rebuild it, their massive claws surprisingly gentle as they moved fallen trees. For 4 years lived between 2 worlds. She sent her research back to the Union, slowly changing how the galaxy saw them. They were not mindless monsters, she wrote. They were intelligent, emotional, complex beings with their own culture and traditions. They were worthy of respect, not fear. The Union did not fully believe her, but they stopped sending hunting parties to 4. That was enough. Then came the night that changed everything. Was in her small outpost, reviewing data on her computer when she heard the howl. It was not a normal hunting call or a greeting between pack members. This sound was raw, broken, filled with a pain that transcended species. It was the sound of a mother whose world had been destroyed. She ran outside into the darkness, her heart pounding in her chest. Emerged from the trees like a ghost, her silver fur matted with blood, her 6 eyes wild with grief and rage. Behind her, the rest of the pack hung back, their own cries joining their matriarch's terrible song. Research colleagues, a named and 2 small, insect-like, scrambled backward in terror. They had never seen this close, had never witnessed their full emotional intensity. To them, this was a nightmare come to life. But walked forward. She approached slowly, her hands open and empty, her posture low and non-threatening. The great beast's eyes fixed on her, and for a moment saw something that broke her heart. Behind the rage, behind the grief, there was hope, was looking at her sister and hopping for help. Placed her small human hand on its massive snout. The beast's breathing was ragged, her body trembling with barely contained emotion. "What happened?" asked in the tongue, her voice soft and steady. "Tell me, Pack Mother, what has hurt you so deeply?" Response came in a series of growls and whimpers, accompanied by images that she somehow pushed into his mind, a gift that they shared only with those they trusted completely. Saw it all. The den where the cubs slept, a warm hollow beneath an ancient tree. 7 cubs, barely 3 months old, their eyes still cloudy with youth, their fur still soft as clouds. They were the future of the pack, the children of and her mate, beloved by every adult in the group. Then the strangers came. They wore masks and carried weapons that made no sound. They moved through the forest with technology that confused the senses, made them see things that were not there, hear sounds that led them away from the den. By the time realized the deception and fought her way back, it was too late. The den was empty. The cubs were gone. Only a strange symbol remained, burned into the tree above the hollow, a crimson fang dripping with blood. Recognized that symbol. Every researcher in the galaxy knew it. The Crimson Fang Syndicate, the most dangerous poaching ring in 3 sectors. They captured rare and deadly creatures, sold them to wealthy collectors or illegal fighting rings. They had never been caught because they operated in the lawless spaces between civilized worlds. And now they had taken 7 cubs. Felt something cold settle in her chest. It was not fear. It was something darker, something that surprised her with its intensity. It was rage. She looked into his eyes, all 6 of them, burning with desperate hope, and made a decision that would change her life forever. "I will find them," she said in the tongue. "Show me the trail, Pack Mother. I will bring your children home." Let out a sound that was half growl, half sob. She pressed her great head against his body, nearly knocking the small human over with the force of her gratitude. Behind them spoke his voice shaking. "You cannot be serious. The Crimson Fang Syndicate, they are killers, they have armies, you are one human." Turned to face her colleague, and something in her eyes made him step back. "They made a mistake," she said quietly. "They thought these were just animals to be captured and sold. They did not know that these cubs have a sister. They did not know that a human would come for them." She began walking toward her outpost, her mind already planning, already calculating. "And by the time they learn the truth," she added, "it will be too late." The inside of his outpost was small but organized. Every tool had its place. Every piece of equipment was exactly where she needed it to be. 4 years of living alone on a dangerous world had taught her the value of order and preparation. Now she moved through the space with quiet purpose, gathering items and placing them on her work table. A medical kit, climbing harnesses, sonic emitters that she had designed to calm frightened cubs, a small blade with a curved edge, forged using techniques she had learned from watching the pack's elders work with stone and bone. Watched her from the doorway, his scaled face twisted with worry. They were a careful species, known for thinking through every problem before acting. He could not understand the human's calm determination. "You do not even know where they took the cubs," he said. "The syndicate could be anywhere in 3 sectors. How will you find them?" Did not look up from her packing. "Will help." The pilot, he is a supply runner, not a soldier. "He is more than that," replied. "Before he came here, he served in the Earth military. He still has contacts in places that the Union pretends do not exist. If anyone can find the syndicate's location, it is him." As if summoned by his name, the communication panel on the wall crackled to life. A man's face appeared on the screen, square jaw, tired eyes, short black hair starting to gray at the temples. Was in his mid-40s, old for a pilot still running dangerous routes, but his hands were steady and his mind was sharp. "I got your message," he said without greeting. "Tell me you are not actually planning what I think you are planning." "The cubs were taken by the Crimson Fang," said. "I need to find them." Was silent for a long moment. His expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, concern, and finally something that looked almost like respect. "Give me an hour," he said. "I will call in some favors." The screen went dark. Continued packing. The 2 small creatures with compound eyes and delicate wings had crept into the outpost and were watching her with obvious fear. They did not understand humans. No species truly did. Humans were soft, weak, slow compared to most galactic species. Yet somehow they had spread across the stars, establishing colonies on worlds that should have killed them, forming bonds with creatures that should have eaten them. It was a mystery that they had never solved. "Why do you do this?" one of them asked, its voice a high-pitched chirp. "They are not your species. The cubs are not your children. Why risk your life for them?" Paused, a coil of rope in her hands. She thought about the question seriously, because it deserved a serious answer. "Humans have a weakness," she said finally. "We become attached. We form bonds with things that are different from us, with animals, with places, with ideas. Once something becomes ours, once it becomes family, we cannot let it go. We will fight for it. We will die for it." She resumed packing. "Trusted me with her pack. She made me her sister. That means her cubs are my cubs too. I do not expect you to understand. It is a human thing." They looked at each other, their compound eyes glittering with confusion. They were right to be confused. What was describing made no logical sense. It was inefficient, dangerous, and ultimately self-destructive. It was also the reason humans had survived, when so many other species had not. An hour passed. Then the communication panel lit up again and his face reappeared. This time there was a map behind him, glowing with markers and routes. "I found them," he said. "The Crimson Fang operates out of a space station called Nexus. It is in neutral territory, far from any Union patrol routes. They have been using it as a base for years, and nobody has touched them because nobody wants to start a war with the criminal underworld." "How well defended?" asked. "Very. At least 30 armed guards at any time, probably more. Automated defense systems on every entrance. Surveillance covering every corridor. And the station itself is filled with other criminals who might decide to help the syndicate if they think it benefits them." Made a sound of despair. "Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Even a full military strike team would have difficulty with those odds." But was studying the map, her eyes moving across the station's layout. "What about the holding cells? Where do they keep the captured creatures?" "Deep inside the facility. Sector 7, bottom level, but you would have to pass through the entire security grid to reach it." "Not if I go through the maintenance tunnels." Leaned closer to the camera. "The maintenance tunnels are monitored too. Motion sensors, heat detectors. You would be spotted within minutes." "Cubs generate a lot of heat," said thoughtfully. The sensors near the holding cells must be calibrated to ignore unusual readings, or they would trigger false alarms constantly. If I can reach that area through the tunnels, I might be able to move more freely. That is a lot of assumptions. Yes. The pilot studied her face through the screen. He had known for 3 years, had watched her work with had seen the way she approached problems with patient determination. He knew that once she decided to do something, nothing would stop her. I am coming with you, he said. Shook her head. I need you to stay with the ship. If something goes wrong, someone needs to be ready for a fast escape. And if nothing goes wrong? A small smile crossed his face. Then I will need someone to fly us home with 7 very loud cubs in the cargo hold. Laughed despite himself. Fine, but I am not just waiting in the ship. I will find a way to cause some distractions, give you more time to work. That would help. The next several hours were filled with preparation. Flew his cargo ship down to the outpost, and together they modified the hold to accommodate large creatures. They installed climate controls, added padding to the walls, and created a system that would pump calming pheromones into the air, chemicals that had synthesized based on her research with the pack. While they worked, waited outside the outpost. She did not enter. The building was too small for her massive body, but she watched through the windows, her 6 eyes never leaving. The other pack members had gathered nearby, creating a ring of silver fur and copper fire around the small human structure. They were standing guard. They were protecting their sister. As the sun set on 4, stepped outside to speak with one final time. I know what you want to do, she said in the tongue. You want to come with me. You want to tear apart the creatures who took your cubs. Growled in agreement. But if you come to the station, they will see you as a threat. They will hurt the cubs before I can reach them. You understand this, Pack Mother. You must wait here. The great beast's growl deepened, filled with frustration and helpless rage. But she did not argue. She understood strategy, understood the value of patience when hunting. It was one of the things that made her species so dangerous. I have an idea, continued. A way that you can still help, but it will require trust. Do you trust me? The matriarch pressed her massive head against his body, nearly lifting the small human off her feet. It was answer enough. Explained her plan. She spoke for a long time, using words and images and gestures to make sure understood every detail. When she finished, the matriarch's eyes were glowing with something new, not just hope but fierce anticipation. The plan was dangerous. It was complicated. It depended on many things going right at exactly the right moments. But it was the kind of plan that only a human could have created, a plan that treated the not as simple beasts, but as partners. An hour later, boarded its cargo ship. She wore dark clothes and carried a pack filled with her carefully chosen equipment. She looked small, fragile, utterly unremarkable. Came to see her off. His scaled face was twisted with emotions he could not name. The Union will not help you if you are caught, he said. They will say you acted alone, that they never approved this mission. You will be abandoned. I know. Then why? Why throw away everything for creatures that most of the galaxy considers monsters? Looked back at the forest, at the ring of still standing guard around the outpost. Was there, her 6 eyes burning like stars. Because they trusted me, she said simply, and I will not betray that trust. She climbed into the ship. The engines roared to life, and as the cargo vessel rose into the sky, leaving the forest moon behind, raised her head and howled, a sound of farewell, of hope, and of promise. The hunt had begun. Inside the ship, glanced at his passenger as they broke through the atmosphere. You know this is probably suicide, he said. Checked her equipment one final time, her hands steady and calm. They think they captured some exotic beasts to sell for profit, she replied. They do not understand what they actually did. They challenged a pack that has a human in it. She looked up, and in that moment, saw something in her eyes that he had only seen once before, in the eyes of soldiers who had accepted that they might not survive a mission, but who would complete it anyway. "The galaxy always underestimates humans," said quietly. "That is their mistake, and they always learn too late." Nexus Station hung in the darkness between stars like a wound in space. It had been built centuries ago as a mining platform, but those days were long gone. Now it served a different purpose. It was a meeting place for criminals, a marketplace for illegal goods, a sanctuary for those who had nowhere else to go. The station was ugly. Its original structure had been expanded so many times that it looked like a metal tumor, bulging in random directions. Lights flickered in some sections while others sat dark and abandoned. Ships of all sizes clustered around its docking bays, cargo vessels, personal cruisers, and a few that were clearly designed for combat. Studied the station through the window of ship as they approached. "Sector 7 is on the far side," said, pointing to a section of the station that was better maintained than the rest. "That is where the Crimson Fang operates. See those patrol ships? They belong to the Syndicate. Anyone who gets too close without permission gets destroyed." "Can you get us past them?" "I have a fake identity chip that should work. I used to run supplies to some of the less terrible criminals here. As long as they do not look too closely, we should be fine." The docking process was tense. A harsh voice came through the communication system, demanding identification and purpose. Answered smoothly, claiming to be a trader bringing in medical supplies. There was a long pause, too long, and then the voice granted permission to dock. The cargo ship settled into a bay on the station's outer ring, far from Sector 7. This was intentional. Did not want to announce her arrival at the Syndicate's doorstep. "Wait here," she told. "Keep the engines warm. When I signal, be ready to move to the Sector 7 docking bay." "How will I know when to move?" Smiled slightly. "Trust me, you will know." She slipped out of the ship and into the station's crowded corridors. The air smelled of machine oil and sweat, and 100 different alien species. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved through the passages, traders, smugglers, mercenaries, and others whose purposes were better left unknown. No one paid attention to the small human woman moving through the crowd. That was exactly what wanted. She found a maintenance access hatch in a forgotten corner of the station. The lock was simple, designed to keep out curious wanderers rather than determined intruders. Had it open in seconds. The tunnels beyond were dark and narrow. Pipes ran along the walls, carrying water and fuel and waste through the station's body. The air was stale and hot. Most creatures would have found it unbearable. Moved through the darkness like she belonged there. 4 years of living with the had changed her in ways that were difficult to explain. She had learned to read air currents, to feel vibrations through surfaces, to move without making sound. The pack had taught her how to hunt, how to stalk, how to be invisible. She had entered their world and become something more than she had been before. Now she used those skills against a different kind of prey. She encountered her first guard 30 minutes into the tunnels. He was a large creature, humanoid but with 4 arms and skin like rough bark. He was checking a junction box, bored and distracted, not expecting anyone to be moving through the maintenance areas. Watched him from the shadows, studying his posture, his breathing, the way he held his body. She had learned from that every creature had weak points, places where pressure could incapacitate without causing permanent harm. She moved. The guard did not even have time to cry out. One moment he was standing, the next he was on the ground, unconscious, with already disappearing into the next tunnel. She had used a technique adapted from how mothers subdued their cubs when they became too wild, firm pressure on specific nerve clusters that triggered immediate sleep. It was effective, it was silent, it left no lasting damage. She encountered 2 more guards as she moved deeper into the station. Each one fell the same way, never seeing their attacker, never understanding what had happened. Did not enjoy this part. She was not a violent person by nature, but she had made a promise and nothing would stop her from keeping it. The tunnels grew warmer as she approached Sector 7. She could feel the heat radiating from somewhere ahead, the holding cells where creatures were kept before being sold. The syndicate maintained specific temperatures for each species, ensuring their merchandise survived long enough to generate profit. She thought of the cubs, trapped in some cold cage, crying for their mother in frequencies that no one on the station could hear. The thought made her move faster. Finally, she reached an access point that opened into the holding area. She pressed her ear against the metal door, listening. Voices on the other side, at least 3 guards, maybe more. They were laughing about something, their attention elsewhere. Checked her equipment one final time. Then she opened the door and stepped through. The holding area was larger than she had expected. Rows of cages lined the walls, each containing a different creature. Some were small and frightened, huddled in corners. Others were large and angry, throwing themselves against their barriers with futile rage. The smell was overwhelming, fear and waste, and the chemical tang of sedatives. The guards spotted her immediately. "Hey, how did you?" Was already moving. She crossed the distance between them before they could raise their weapons, her body flowing like water around their attempts to stop her. One fell to a pressure point strike. Another went down when she swept his legs and applied a chokehold. The third managed to reach for his communication device, but's hand was faster, knocking it away, and then pressing her fingers into the soft spot beneath his jaw until his eyes rolled back. 3 guards, 8 seconds, no alarms. She stood in the sudden silence, breathing hard, and began searching the cages. She found them in the back corner. The cage was too small. It had been designed for creatures a fraction of the cub's eventual size, and the 7 young were pressed together in a pile, their bodies overlapping, their 6 eyes dim with fear and exhaustion. They were malnourished, their silver fur matted and dull. They were crying in subsonic frequencies, sounds too low for human ears, but had learned to feel them in her chest, in her bones. Her heart broke. She knelt before the cage, pressing her hand against the bars, and spoke in the tongue. "Peace, little ones, your sister is here." The cubs stirred, their copper eyes, all 42 of them, focused on her face. They recognized her scent, her voice, her posture. They had seen her in the pack, had played at her feet while their mother watched with amused tolerance. The crying stopped. The largest cub, a male who would someday grow to rival his father in size, pressed his nose against the bars, sniffing her hand. His tail, short and stubby, began to wag. "I know," whispered. "I know you are scared, but I am going to take you home now. I am going to take you back to your mother. Do you understand?" The cubs understood. They understood because they trusted her, because she was Pack, because she had proven herself worthy of that trust over 4 years of patience and dedication. The cage lock was more complex than the maintenance hatches, but had prepared for this. She pulled a device from her pack, a universal decoder that had acquired through channels he refused to discuss, and attached it to the lock mechanism. 30 seconds later, the cage door swung open. The cubs poured out, surrounding her, pressing their small bodies against her legs. They were scared but hopeful, confused but relieved. Knelt among them, running her hands through their matted fur, whispering reassurances in their language. "We need to move," she told them. "Follow me, stay close, stay quiet." The cubs arranged themselves around her in a formation she recognized, a defensive pattern that used when protecting injured pack members. They were treating her as the one who needed protection, placing their small bodies between her and any potential threat. It was instinct. It was love. It was the bond between pack members that transcended species. Smiled despite the danger. Then she began leading them toward the exit. She had made it halfway across the holding area when the alarm finally triggered. Red lights flashed. Sirens screamed. A mechanical voice announced a security breach in Sector 7. Doors began sealing throughout the facility. Looked down at the cubs, then at the exit that was quickly closing. "Run," she said. They ran. She pushed through the closing door with seconds to spare, the cubs flowing around her like a silver river. Behind them, she could hear shouting, footsteps, the sound of weapons being. The hunt was not over, it had only just begun. But had the cubs, she had what she came for, and nothing in this station, nothing in this entire galaxy was going to stop her from bringing them home. She pulled out her communication device and sent a single word to. Now, somewhere on the other side of the station, a cargo ship's engines roared to life. The escape had begun. The corridors of Sector 7 were chaos. Red lights flashed from every surface. Sirens screamed warnings in 3 different languages. Security teams rushed toward the holding area, their weapons drawn and ready. None of them expected to find a small human woman walking calmly through the madness, surrounded by 7 silver cubs. Moved at a steady pace, not running, not hiding. The cubs stayed close to her legs, their copper eyes darting nervously at the lights and sounds. They were scared but disciplined, following their sister without question. She had a plan, would bring the ship to the Sector 7 docking bay. She just needed to reach it before the syndicate could stop her, simple enough in theory. In practice, it was quickly becoming impossible. A squad of guards appeared at the end of the corridor, 6 of them, heavily armed, blocking the path to the docking bay. They raised their weapons the moment they saw her. "Stop right there," the leader shouted. "On the ground now." Stopped, the cubs pressed closer against her legs, growling softly. She studied the guards with calm eyes. They were tense, frightened. They had been told that someone had broken into their most secure area and stolen valuable merchandise. They expected a team of professionals, not a single woman with a group of alien cubs. "I would rather not get on the ground," said politely. "I have places to be." The guard leader's face twisted with confusion and anger. "I said on the ground, last warning." "You should know something," continued, as if he had not spoken. "These cubs belong to a pack. Their mother is very upset about losing them, and I made her a promise that I would bring them home safely." "We do not care about your promises. Those creatures are property of the Crimson Fang Syndicate. You are going to put them back in their cage, and then you are going to explain how you got past our security." Tilted her head slightly. "I'm afraid I cannot do that." Before the guards could react, she pulled a device from her pocket and pressed a button. Every light in the corridor went dark. The darkness lasted only 3 seconds, just long enough for to guide the cubs through a side passage that she had memorized from the station's maintenance maps. When the emergency lights flickered back on, the guards found themselves alone in the corridor. The small human and her 7 charges had vanished. "Find her," the leader screamed. "Search every level, she cannot have gone far." But was already moving through the walls of the station, using maintenance tunnels and forgotten passages to avoid the security teams. The cubs followed silently, their natural hunting instincts keeping them quiet and alert. They emerged in a wide chamber that served as a central hub for Sector 7. The docking bay was visible through a large window, and so was ship, hovering just outside, waiting for her signal. Unfortunately, so was the welcoming committee. 20 armed guards stood between and the docking bay doors, and in front of them, his face twisted with rage, was the leader of the Crimson Fang Syndicate himself. Was a Like's colleague, but that was where the similarity ended. Where was timid and careful was brutal and cold. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes were the color of old blood. He had built the Crimson Fang through violence and fear, crushing anyone who stood in his way. Now he stared at the small human woman, who had just made fools of his entire organization. "A human," he said, his voice dripping with disbelief. "One human broke into my station, walked through my security, and freed my property. This is what my people are telling me, but I find it hard to believe." Stood straight, her hand resting gently on the head of the largest cub. The 7 young had arranged themselves around her again, their positions perfect for a defensive formation. "Believe it," she said. Laughed a harsh, grating sound. "You have courage, I will admit that. Stupid, suicidal courage, but courage nonetheless. Tell me, human, what was your plan? How did you expect to walk out of here with my merchandise?" "These are not merchandise," replied calmly. "They are children. They have a mother who is waiting for them, and I promised her I would bring them home." The laugh grew louder. "You are mad, completely mad. They are beasts, nothing more. They do not have mothers or children, they have breeding stock and offspring. And these offspring are worth 10 million credits each to my buyers." He stepped closer, his guards parting to let him through. His confidence was absolute. He had 20 armed soldiers behind him and 1 small woman in front. The outcome was obvious. "Here is what is going to happen," he said. "You are going to put those cubs back in their cage. Then you are going to tell me who sent you, who helped you, and how you bypassed my security. After that, I will decide whether to kill you quickly or sell you to someone who collects exotic humans." Did not move, her expression did not change. "I am going to walk out of here with these cubs," she said simply. "That is what is going to happen." Some amusement faded. There was something in the human's eyes, a stillness, a certainty that made his survival instincts stir uneasily. "You are bluffing." "No. You are alone. You have no weapons. My guards will cut you down before you take 3 steps." Smiled, a cold, quiet expression that made the nearest guard shift nervously. "You kidnapped cubs," she said. "Do you know what that means? Do you know what happens when you threaten the children of a pack? They howl and rage and eventually forget. They are animals. They track, they hunt, they never forget and they never forgive." His voice dropped lower. "When I left 4, I brought more than hope with me. I brought a tracking beacon. The pack mother has been following my signal since I entered your station." The color drained from his face. "That is impossible, cannot survive in space." "They cannot, but they can survive inside a modified cargo ship. My pilot has been rather busy these past few hours." As if summoned by her words, the station shuddered. Emergency alarms began wailing. Different from the security alerts, these were proximity warnings. Something large was approaching the docking bay. Something that should not exist. The window overlooking the bay flickered with motion, and then a ship came into view, a cargo vessel. Its hull from a hard journey, its loading ramp already lowering. And emerging from that ramp, her silver fur gleaming under the station's lights, her 6 copper eyes burning with maternal fury, came. She was not alone. 3 adults followed their matriarch, each one nearly as large, each one radiating the kind of power that made every guard in the chamber freeze with primal terror. The howl that echoed through the station was not a sound. It was a force, a wave of pure predatory intent that struck every living creature in Sector 7 like a physical blow. Guards dropped their weapons. Some fell to their knees. Others simply ran, abandoning their posts, their loyalty to evaporating in the face of something their deepest instincts told them they could not fight. Even brutal and cold as he was, took a step backward. Stood exactly where she had been, unmoved by the howl. The cubs around her legs were wagging their stubby tails, crying out in high-pitched yips of joy. Their mother had come. "You can try to stop me," said Tu, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Or you can run, but I am walking out of here with these cubs, and you will not follow." She began walking toward the docking bay. The cubs bounded ahead, racing toward with the unbridled enthusiasm of children reunited with their parent. The great matriarch dropped to the ground, gathering her offspring against her body, crooning in frequencies that only could hear. walked past the frozen guards. She walked past who stood motionless, his red eyes fixed on the adult with naked fear. She walked through the docking bay doors and up the loading ramp of the cargo ship. And no one moved to stop her. Not because they could not because they lacked the weapons or the numbers, but because, in that moment, they finally understood what they were dealing with. They were not just beasts, they were partners, they were family. And the small human woman who walked among them was not a victim or a fool. She was their sister. And she had just taught the entire galaxy a lesson about underestimating humanity. The cargo ship's hold was filled with sounds that would remember for the rest of her life. Lay in the center of the padded floor, her massive body creating a living fortress around her 7 cubs. The young ones crawled over each other, nipping at ears and tails, trying to get as close to their mother as possible. Their subsonic crying had stopped, replaced by chirps and yips of pure joy. The matriarch's 6 copper eyes were half closed, her great chest rising and falling with slow, contented breaths. She was crooning in that deep frequency that felt more than heard, a sound of comfort, of safety, of love. The 3 adults who had accompanied stood guard near the walls of the hold. Their eyes swept constantly, watching for threats that would never come. Old habits died hard, especially for creatures who had spent their lives at the top of the food chain. Sat against the bulkhead, her legs stretched out in front of her body exhausted but her heart full. One of the smaller cubs had crawled away from the pile and into her lap, falling asleep with its nose pressed against her stomach. She stroked its silver fur absently, marveling at how soft it still was. His voice came through the intercom. "We are in hyperspace. No pursuit detected. I think we actually got away with it." "Thank you," called back, "for everything. Save your thanks until we are actually on the ground. I still cannot believe that plan worked." Neither could, if she was being honest. So many things could have gone wrong. The guards could have shot her before she reached the cubs. The alarm could have triggered earlier. Could have decided that revenge was more important than survival. But none of those things had happened. The plan had worked, and now 7 young were going home to their pack. Opened her eyes and looked at. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, 2 species, utterly alien, connected by bonds that transcended biology. Then spoke in the tongue, her voice a low rumble that vibrated through the ship's floor. "Sister, you did what no other creature would have done. You risked your life for cubs that were not your own blood. The pack will sing songs of this day. Your name will be remembered when the stars grow cold." Felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them away, not wanting to show weakness in front of the pack. "I made you a promise," she said simply. "I kept it." "You did more than keep a promise. You proved that humans are worthy of trust. Many species in this galaxy see your kind as weak, as simple, as prey. They do not understand what makes humans truly dangerous." "What is that?" His copper eyes glowed with something that might have been respect, or might have been amusement. "You love without logic. You fight for things that do not benefit you. You form bonds with creatures that should be your enemies. This makes you unpredictable. This makes you terrifying." The matriarch paused. "This is why they accepted you, sister, because you showed us that humans are not prey. They are pack." Could not find words to respond. She simply nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The journey back to 4 took 6 hours. Slept for most of it, her body finally surrendering to the exhaustion she had been ignoring. The cub in her lap did not move except to snuggle closer when she shifted positions. When she woke, the ship was descending through the thick atmosphere of the forest moon. The trees appeared below them like a vast green ocean, stretching to every horizon. Somewhere down there, the rest of the pack was waiting. Landed the ship in the clearing near outpost. As the loading ramp lowered, the sounds of the forest rushed in, clicks and calls and rustles that had come to know as well as the sounds of her childhood home on Earth. The cubs scrambled down the ramp first, their little legs wobbly but eager. They tumbled into the grass, rolling and playing, intoxicated by the smell of home. Followed more slowly, her great body moving with dignity despite her obvious joy. The pack emerged from the trees. They came in silence, but could feel their emotional intensity like heat from a fire. Adult approached the cubs one by one, sniffing them, nuzzling them, confirming with their own senses that the young ones were truly safe. Fathers and aunts and older siblings surrounded the returning family, creating a wall of silver fur and copper eyes. And then the howling began. It started with a single note, pure and clear, rising into the sky. One by one, the other pack members joined her, adding their voices to the song. The sound was so powerful that the trees shook and birds exploded from the canopy in panic. But knew that this was not a howl of rage or grief. This was joy. This was celebration. This was the pack welcoming its lost children home. She stood at the bottom of the loading ramp, watching, feeling the sound wash over her like a wave. She was too tired to cry, too exhausted to fully process what she had accomplished. But she felt something warm spreading through her chest, a sense of completion, of rightness. And they had emerged from the outpost and were watching from a safe distance. They had never seen the like this, had never understood the depth of their emotional lives. Perhaps now they would begin to. Came down the ramp and stood beside. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were soft. "The Galactic Union is going to have questions," he said quietly. "A human civilian infiltrated a criminal station, freed stolen goods, and facilitated an alien predator incursion. There is probably a lot of paperwork in your future. Probably. The syndicate might want revenge too. You may look foolish in front of his own people. People like him do not forget that kind of thing." "I know." Was silent for a moment, then he let out a long breath. "So what is the plan now?" Watched gather her cubs, watched the pack swirl around their matriarch in a tide of celebration. One of the cubs broke away from the group and came bounding toward her, crashing into her legs with clumsy enthusiasm. She knelt and pulled the little creature into a hug. It smelled like the ship's recycled air and its mother's fur and the first hints of the forest. It was warm and heavy and alive. "Same as always," she said, looking up with a tired smile. "We protect the pack." The howling continued for hours. As the sun set over four, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the pack gathered in their usual clearing. They ate together, slept together, existed together as they had for countless generations. And in the middle of them, accepted without question, loved without reservation, sat a small human woman who had proven that size and strength were not the only measures of power. Leaned against swarm flank, surrounded by sleeping cubs, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. She thought about Earth, about her family there, about the life she had left behind to study alien worlds. She had never imagined that her journey would lead her here, to a forest moon at the edge of known space, to a pack of apex predators who had accepted her as one of their own, to a story that would be told across the galaxy. But she would not change any of it. Shifted beside her, opening one copper eye to look at her sister. "You are thinking," the matriarch rumbled. "Your mind is loud." "I am thinking about the future," admitted, "about what comes next. The future is simple. We hunt, we protect, we raise the young, we live as we have always lived." Thigh closed again. "And now we do it with a human at our side. The pack is stronger for it." Smiled and closed her own eyes. The forest sounds surrounded her, the chirping of insects, the rustling of leaves, the deep breathing of the around her. It was alien and strange and beautiful. It was home. The stars continued their slow dance overhead, indifferent to the small drama that had played out on the station and the moon. Somewhere out in that vast darkness, the Crimson Fang Syndicate was probably planning revenge. Somewhere, The Galactic Union was probably deciding how to respond to a human who had acted outside their authority. But those were problems for another day. Tonight there was only the pack, only the family, only the bond between a human and the creatures who had accepted her. Slept peacefully, surrounded by warmth and love, knowing that whatever came next, she would not face it alone. She was sister. She was pack. She was home,